Wait. Yeah, okay, you're good too.
All right. Okay. Cool. So, so this probably the one of your, uh, I mean the knowledge sharing sessions that you have, based on the discussion that I had with Hishan, that you are trying to take it to another level. We are
Yeah.
trying to get the insight from some of the experience uh, people, let's say in terms of the work industry experience that they have. So you're trying to get their insight as well and share among yourselves. That's the understanding that I have. So this is one of those first sessions that you're going to have. So based on the discussion that I had, yeah. So I'm going to share my experience in terms of the journey that I have come through, and what I believe personally the traits that you need to follow to get into become an architect especially, and there are some other aspects that are required across that. So that's and having said that, let's make this as a two-way discussion where let's try to communicate with each other. Wherever you want, you can stop me and shoot your questions and see whether I can tackle them as much as possible. I'll try to give a fair, the reasonable answer if I have enough information around that, and if not, I'll have to come back to you on that. So, so I think we are good to start. So me, I'm Shyamal. Just for a formal introduction, I'm Shyamal Madura Patabendige, and currently I'm okay. That's another thing to highlight. I'm being relocated now, so I have moved to Melbourne, Australia right now, and I came here a week ago. But anyway, I'll introduce to you myself as an principal software architect at Axiata Digital Labs. And before that, basically, I studied, or rather, I graduated from University of California from the Management Information Technology Department. And soon after that, I joined Virtusa as a associate engineer in 2007. And by the time I'm leaving Virtusa, which is in 2019, mm, after 12 years, then I got promoted to several position, and the time of leaving, I was a software architect. Yeah. So then I joined Axiata Digital Labs as a senior software architect, and then soon got promoted to the principal software architect until I left Axiata Digital Lab, which happened December 31st last year. So now I have relocated myself to Melbourne. Initially, this is for a temporary plan for about 2 years, and then I'm going to decide where I'll go. So currently, I'm working as a principal software engineer. That's basically the role that for someone coming from my level of experience that usually will get assigned to in terms of a designation. And throughout my career, I have worked in software services industry. I would say for except for the last couple of years, first of all, especially within Virtusa, I worked in the software service industry. Means that we as a vendor providing services to other customers. And the project-based engagement that I had is predominantly I worked on the telecommunication industry. And once I moved to Axiata Digital Lab, there where I started to work in a product-based development or a platform-based development, and that's so basically I have a couple of years of experience working in the product-based companies as well. So that's about me, and so we getting into the actual business where the expectation I have been set by the Heshan before is that. So how what is the journey that I have come through to become a software architect, as well as what are the expectation in terms of the software architect that the industry has, and what are the traits that they need to have, and what are the things that as an the junior or someone who are new to the industry, or someone who's soon planning to come into the industry, that they would know in terms of getting to the industry, and how they can set their goals to become a software architect or a relevant position within the industry. I hope I'm correct. Yeah. So if any of you have a question, as I can tell you that you are, I'm happy to be interrupted and suit your questions.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, so any of you have an idea what is the expectation of an software architect, and what kind of role that they usually play? It it could be a, there's no right or wrong answer, but the opinions that you have, if anyone that can share, probably that would probably could be a icebreaker as well for this particular discussion, that I can take it forward. If any of you are happy to take it up.
Yeah, let me go. Uh, yeah, I don't know like the formal definition of a
Mm-hmm.
software architect, but the way I think of it is like when we think about software, like there are like certain ways that you can actually organize your components just to cater to like your needs, like the needs of the system or the requirement. So the
Mm-hmm.
architect is the person that who would just look at the requirement and then just basically figure out how we should organize like the set of components in the most efficient way.
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty good answer, Aisha. Anyone else want to go have a go? Okay, fine. So before I get into the software architecture, the software architect, its traditional world, is treated as the most senior technical person in the team. Usually play the architect role. Yeah, and as you rightly mentioned, in some of the cases, the architect is going to the level of identifying the requirement and grooming it, and then defining the technical design, and validating that as well until he get delivered to the production as well, was played by some of basically in the past. That is the way that the technical, or rather the architect, that how they have played the role. But things have become drastically changed within last decade or so, where the landscape of the software has changed a lot, and it even as of today it has been changing rapidly. Where that is we usually now it has become a fact that this most senior person of the technical, or rather what are the person on the team, is the most outdated person usually when it's come to the technical aspect, and some of the framework and related technology that have been used as of today. So that is no longer valid. But however, there are certain aspect responsibilities are expected from a software architecture. But before that, so obviously the software architect is supposed to define and guide the software architecture or the system architecture. So usually what you see when it's come to the architecture, they would have the set of structures, let's say as in boxes and arrows, or may as a line, and that would be the diagram that have been usually we see as an architect. But there are that doesn't really define a proper architecture, but there are some other aspect as well usually has to be captured within a software architecture, that are something things like the security, the operational compliance. So unless you address these things, whatever the software that you have designed um, wouldn't be able to be successful in a production environment. So those are the main areas that are being that has to be addressed by a software architect while designing a software. So one of the leading software architect, or um, uh, I would say one of the very popular person that you must have heard about, is Martin Fowler. He has said the responsibility of the architect is to make the important and hard to change decision in a software project or in a software ecosystem. That's the key responsibility of a software architect. So when it's come to the software architect, he'll have to make sure that he take the right decision to ensure the quality of the software. So when it's come to a software architect, usually he'll have to ensure the software product that we will be deploying to a production, which can be accessed by the end users, are ensuring some of the quality attributes that you may have heard about. Let's say the availability, reliability, fault tolerance, recoverability, security, maintainability. Things like this, these are considered as software quality attributes. So, taking the right decision to ensure these quality attributes are addressed is the responsibility that the software architecture would have, and which he will be enforcing on top of the software architecture. So basically, he will give a holistic view of the overall system, or some of you may refer to this as the blueprint, that will address the key decisions of the relevant system that you are developing. It doesn't mean that the software architect would need to know every piece of technical information of your system. In today's world, knowing this information is a, it's not a reality. You wouldn't be there are architects that who do coding. There are architects who wouldn't code as well. But it doesn't matter. Coding is not an aspect of an architect. However, he would need to know the nitty-gritty details that would require in order for him to make the right decision to make the overall system successful. So when I say the overall system, the system may have various type of component. There could be a database component, there could be caching component, messaging component, and the various type of front end technologies being used to develop the front end software. Maybe when I say the front end software, the web component, mobile component, or various type of other component that are accessible to the end user, and the middleware component, or maybe the middleware component like the backend system, caching, messaging, which I mentioned to you before, or database systems like SQL, NoSQL, or a different type of integration mechanism between multiple services, whether to have a asynchronous communication between services, or the synchronized communication between the services. So those type of decision will be made by the architect in order to ensure the overall quality of the software. The point that I wanted to stress out here, he wouldn't go into the point where what would be the database technology that I need to use. Would that be PostgreSQL, or would that be a MySQL, or a Oracle? That would be the responsibility of the technical lead. So if the architect as well is trying to focus on that level of finer details, he wouldn't be able to focus on the high level aspect of the overall system. So knowing this information is very important. I mean, would be very helpful to the architect. But knowing that the basically the basic abstract view, or maybe the fundamentals behind these technologies, uh, knowing that would be very easy for him to make the decision. But let's say the syntax and whether to the most performant way of implementing for loop would be this way or the other way, wouldn't necessarily require to become an architect. And do you follow me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. So that is not something that is required uh, as part of the architect's let's say the responsibilities. However, so the main key responsibilities of the architect would be so usually we have seen even within our organization as well, we have seen that people are reporting to an architect, but it's not really necessary. Usually the technical team can be reported to a manager. So the managing a team wouldn't be a core responsibility of an architect. Key responsibilities would be designing a system architecture as well as influencing a team technically and guiding them to deliver the software with the quality attributes that I have mentioned, making sure by achieving these aspects within the software that you develop and deliver. Also, he will have to have, so how this is the things where it will basically differentiate typically a technical lead and architect, where he'll have to have the skill set to explain these aspects to a team as well as to a broader audience. So the team where he would might work very closely with, but there could be a broader audience where the other stakeholders where they are not coming from a technical background, where they must be coming from various type of other background. So he will have to have the capability, experience as well as the knowledge required to understand the audience and accordingly influence and deliver the message that required us to establish the ground in to basically implement the software, the decision that they have taken. So let's say that I have taken a decision to implement the software on the cloud instead of the on-prem. So you know the on-prem and cloud differences, right, guys?
Yeah, I've heard
Impl-
about it, but I wouldn't call
yeah.
myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say the software implementing a software on the on-prem means that your servers are residing within your organizations, and the application will be deployed to that particular set of servers. But implementing a software on a cloud environment means that you may be deploying the application on AWS, Azure, or GCP. Understand?
Yep.
Yes. So, as an architect, by discussing with your team and with the relevant other stakeholders, you may have made a decision now to deploy this application on a cloud environment. So now you have made a decision instead of using on-prem to move into a cloud. But there could be a situation where some of the stakeholders may resist to this particular decision. But it's a responsibility of, so it's not the developer who would go and convince them. It's not the technical lead usually go and convince them. It would be a responsibility of architect would have to have the capability and the right skill set to communicate this decision in a manner that that particular stakeholder will understand. He won't go and use those jargons which doesn't make any sense to the account department people and try to convince this message to them. Due to this reason, I will have to deploy them in the AWS environment. But you must be using some other language like financial related aspect or relevant facts in order to convince them. So that is one of the skill set that as an architect that you will have to master on. That's that as well is one of the aspect it is expected from the architect. And as I mentioned to you before as well, so one of the key challenges nowadays that are faced by software architect is that knowing the huge technical landscape that as of today we are dealing with, which wasn't the case few years back. Due to that reason, now this has become a collaborative effort. It's not that architect himself is deciding on the technologies, but he will do is he will get the support of other team members, technical team members especially, and he will guide them to collect the relevant information. Maybe he will assign some of the team members to do R&D and find the relevant comparison among multiple database types, and maybe various type of database implementation or the database types like NoSQL, SQL. Likewise, he will deploy his team to work on these areas and will gather the information, and based on that, now he'll make the decision, which is a different behavior that we observe nowadays compared to few years or the maybe 10 years back. That's the reason being the just for a single architect, it's really difficult for us to expect him to know finer details of every software platform tools that we have today. So that would be one of the aspects that you will have to work on if you are to become an architect. So you will have to work with the team collaboratively, and you will have to guide them and get the relevant information from them and use those information to make the right decision using those facts that they will provide to you. You follow me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 So those are the things for an if you are to become a software architect that you will usually have to follow. So there are other basically when you design a system that you need to look at that from the higher level. Usually we say it from the bird view, where you just don't focus on only on one aspect. Let me use all the technologies: Spring Boot, React, Kubernetes, Docker, whatever the new technologies that you come across. If you try to use this, maybe your overall outcome would fail. You might have developed a very sophisticated software, but it could be very expensive, and it may be very costly. I mean, expensive to maintain as well as costly to deliver as well. So then, for as an architect, you have failed, even though you have developed a sophisticated system. That's the reason why we say you will have to look at from the bird view, and you will need to consider all the aspects of an organization. What is the business objective, and what's the IT budget that I have? What's the IT strategy? If you are to, let's say that I have a project today and I have a decision to make whether to deploy this in on-prem or in the company infrastructure or maybe on the GCP. And as a overall organization, you have a strategy to go to cloud after 6 months. The project take 9 months. So it's obvious decision that you will have to go to cloud, right? That's those are the things that you will have to keep in mind when you make decision. Also about the people, culture, and the governance framework that you may have, and what type of platform that you need to adapt. Because so let's say then typically if you have a large pool of resources with Java resources, and if you're trying to choose Node.js, would be a disaster because you wouldn't have any resource to work on the project. Also the security aspect, um, and the operational easiness means that once you get the project to the production, how easy for you to maintain is. Do you want more people to maintain more than the people that you have used to develop? Then that would be a disaster or a failure as well. Those are the aspects typically that an architect usually have to focus on. So the key point here being that there are certain aspects as an architect that you'll have to focus in order to design and deliver a successful software. But for an architect, if you try to grab the whole notion, that would be a disaster where it is very difficult for you to know each and every technology out there on the industry as of today. So it's more like a discipline-driven approach that you have to follow. So, that's in general how what is expected from an architect, and as an architect what you will have to deliver. But if you take me an example, so I basically was lucky to groom other experienced people that I had with across multiple projects. So I always had the opportunity of working with them and gain that knowledge. And that's at a point I was trying to learn and know every tool platform that are coming out, and I thought that would be my advantage and the leverage as well. And later I realized no, it is not the case. But it is very important to know the fundamentals of the software engineering. That's the key thing that I need to stress upon in this journey if you are to become a great architect, software architect. So, so why I wanted to stress this point is that so in the last couple of years, what we have seen in the industry. So whenever we come across uh, different candidates where we were trying to evaluate them into our and recruit them, especially when we were in the service industry, we need people with certain skill set. But if I'm in the product industry, the approach to recruit the people would be a little bit different, right? So there are various type of approach that we have as a when it comes to recruiting people. So the different type of trades or the aspect of a candidate we will be looking at. But the biggest but however the biggest thing that we have seen that are lacking, especially within last couple of years when we do the interviews, is that most of our new graduates or the fresh graduates that we have seen, or the, the, the people that are having very least experience on the industry, what we have seen is that they are very good in certain platforms, certain technologies, but they are lacking in software fundamentals. They wouldn't know object oriented programming, they wouldn't know the performance aspect of a software. So for an example, if you they have worked couple of years with Spring Boot framework, but they don't know anything about how the framework works. So the problem would be, for an example, me as a architect, when I was trying to get people into my project, I like let's take this as a different example on a day-to-day life. Do you like to, let's say that you have to go on a long journey with different type of terrains, like you go on highways, you go on normal road, and you go on um, some uh, let's say untidy roads, and you can't be sure about the travel condition that you may come across. In this case, would you get a driver to drive a vehicle who are knowing only to drive the vehicle, or would you like to get a person to drive the vehicle who would know what is happening under the hood? I'm sure you are comfortable with a person that who would drive your vehicle, who would know how things are working under the hood. That same applies to me as well when I'm recruiting candidate as well. So I would like to know, and I would like to basically recruit people that who have worked with this platform, which is a very good thing. But I would like more if they have a very good understanding about this thing, these particular libraries, these particular frameworks, how those are working under the hood as well. Reason being, so any software that we know that they error prone, right? We can't be sure about any of our software that we develop are bugs free. But if something goes wrong with any of those tools that we use, the person who knows how things are working under the hood would be able to easily identify and rectify those issues. But someone who has used this type of framework or the technologies for years, but they don't have a clue how it is working under the hood, they will struggle a lot when it's come to a situation where disruptions happen with these type of softwares that we have developed using those technologies. So my humble request is that if you are to become a great software engineer or a software architect, it is very important to know the fundamentals of the software engineering as well as any of the technologies that you come across. Let's say if you are using some technologies, make sure that you know how that particular technology working and what's the reason to use this particular technology. For an example, GraphQL is one of those technologies that are very popular now. That is, I mean, very popular nowadays. But the reason to introduce the GraphQL had a different problem those days for Facebook. So I don't know any of you have heard about that. The one of those days the problem that the Facebook as a company, what their advantage is the user base. So what they want to do is they wanted to penetrate into the user base as much as possible. And at a point, they have penetrated into most of the metropolitans and some of those countries and the cities where the infrastructure is very good. Means the data speed is very good. And so then they realize, so their growth, the user base growth is slowing down. When they wanted to identify the reason, they identified that the Facebook, especially the mobile application, is rarely being used in some of the rural areas in some of those countries where the data quality that they consume was very low. And the solution they came up with is the GraphQL, where they were trying to push as much as information at the very first stage that the mobile application launched from your mobile device. And to accommodate that, the traditional, the RESTful APIs or the technologies that they had wasn't enough. That's where they wanted to come up with this new technology called GraphQL. And there was some other compromise they did by introducing this as well. So if you know this, if you use the GraphQL, that could exploit your server resources. But for a company like Facebook, it wasn't a problem. They had enough money in their pockets to spend on these, and they took that hit and they went ahead with this strategy, and they were able to penetrate into new market segment as well, where they had the very low data quality. What I want to tell you is that there was a certain technical problem or the business requirement Facebook had, and for that they used this particular technology. But it worked for Facebook, but for your application design, without knowing the particular reason why you would need to choose these type of technologies, and if you try to use it in your design just for the sake of knowing that Facebook was successful, you might fail because you are not Facebook. You have a different business problem to solve. So it's very important to know why these type of technologies are being introduced, what's the purpose behind that, and knowing that you should use if you are to become a successful software engineer or a software architect. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to achieve the relevant outcome of using these type of technologies. So that is one of the examples that I want to share with you as well. And knowing the breadth wouldn't be very important, but knowing the depth is very important. That's the very last point that I want to tell you before probably open the floor to questions. Guys, I think maybe,
All right.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So yeah, I had one question. Like earlier, like you said, like uh, like the responsibility of a software architect is to like at the designing phase, get like the requirement and then just think about like all the possibilities and come up with the best blueprint considering like all of the factors. But what would happen like after like the designing phase? I know you said like like assuring like the quality of the product is one of the responsibilities.
Mm,
But when you move into like the development phase, what kind of interactions would you have with like the team that is actually developing the software? Like,
mm. Yeah, very good question, Ishan. I think probably I was misunderstood. It's not just that the designing the software architecture is the responsibility of the architect. His responsibility lies throughout the process of delivering the software. His key responsibility is identifying the system requirement, business requirement, and the overall technical or the business landscape, and designing the software. And throughout the delivery process, he'll have to ensure that the implementation is aligned into the blueprint that he has defined, which is happening usually through the review process. He will engage with the team frequently, and then he will validate whatever the next level of design decision that the team has taken is still aligning to the blueprint that he has come up with. Also, it doesn't mean that once you have the blueprint, the team will have to follow that and deliver the software. There would be scenarios due to the certain new requirement or maybe due to the different type of challenges that the architect may not have seen at the front. Team may come back to you as well, telling you that this cannot be done, and there are some other ways of doing it. At that point, then the architect will have to go back and he revisit his blueprint as well. He may update the blueprint or the architecture as well. So that's the ongoing process throughout the project or the whatever the software life cycle that he'll be take part of.
I see.
Okay. I have a question. So, when interacting with developers and the stakeholder, what are the key documents you use? I mean, usually.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So uh, things have changed drastically with the agile process, but still there are certain documents are being used regardless of the software methodology that you use to develop the software. Usually you have the main artifacts that the software architect will get involved is the software architecture document. There are various type of conventions are being used. We call it software detailed software design DSD, and some call it detailed software technical design, which will have several type of architecture being defined. One is the business architecture, which will highlight the business aspect of the architecture. And the second level of architecture called the technical architecture, which we usually see with the database, different type of integration, front end of the communication mechanism like sync, async, messaging, caching, things like that, usually included on this particular architecture, which we call as the technical architecture. And there's another architecture called deployment architecture or the implementation architecture that will usually have the deployment components, the certain type of components like database will have to be deployed on certain type of software sorry servers, and the application services will have to be deployed on certain type of servers, and the web servers, the load balancers, things like that would be part of this particular deployment architecture. And there's another architecture called the network architecture that usually define that can be combined with the deployment architecture as well. But some of the cases I have seen that has been depend as a different architecture where it will usually have the security related aspect like firewall implementation on certain type of layers and the load balancers to distribute the requests to certain type of servers, like let's say the implementation can be done on achieving high availability fault tolerance where you will have multiple data center setup, things like that. Maybe those are too much for you, but shake of names, if I tell you, yes, business architecture, technical architecture, deployment architecture, and some of the cases network architecture as well would be part of those documents that usually uh, software architects will interact with in order to communicate his messages to his the team.
Okay, so the information architecture and the so you mentioned two information architecture and the deployment
I-
architecture. Both are same,
so,
right?
no, sorry, implementation I said, right? Not the information.
Sorry, implementation.
Yeah, implementation and deployment, it's the same. Sorry.
Okay.
If I say again, business architecture, technical architecture, deployment or the implementation architecture, and some of the cases, network architecture.
Okay. So I mean, when there are changes in the requirements, then basically these documents also going to change, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Those would be, yeah. These would be living documents. So
Mhm.
might get updated till the date you get, deploy the application.
Okay.
However, those usually update by the software architect, and whatever the updates usually happen on the later stage due to certain challenges, difficulties that you may come across, or due to the change in the requirement usually happens. But so whenever there's a change to the architecture, it could be a very huge change to the development team. So it's very important to identify these type of requirement upfront and define a very solid architecture. But otherwise, there's a cost associated with such changes, Jasanka. Because whenever you do a change, it would be 1 or 2 days of work for architect, but it could be 10 to 20 days of work for the development team.
So I mean, for a team like SAFE, we are creating developing some kind of application such as colleagues you interacted with, and yeah, we are developing some kind of applications, right? You already know. So
Yeah,
how I mean, what kind of uh, level that you recommend us to work on this kind of documents and I mean requirement gathering process
yeah,
and those
yeah.
things.
Mm, mm. So type of a work that you do, especially will have to adapt the strategies that are being used by the open source software as well, Jason. The people come and contribute as time permits to them. And the collaboration is very difficult because they have their other work as well, commitment as well. So I would suggest like for a program like that you are taking part of, it's a very high level technical diagram would technical architecture would help to define where whoever comes in then they would know whatever the decision that they take at their level is aligned into the given architecture that everyone is following. So that would be one of the key artifact that you can maintain within your um, uh, uh, the high level project level also. But if someone is, so let's say that your project is having certain components and the component can have its own next level of design but still align into the high level architecture. For an example, if I tell you, let's say that the order management system might have several other components that it interact with, right? There could be high level architecture that all the components, how those should be implemented by aligning to. So that would define the high level architecture. But when, let's say, the order component, inventory management component, or the customer information management component could be the next level of subcomponent that you have within the high level architecture, but that can have still a detailed level of design, but still should be aligned into the high level architecture. So, but that again, there's no hard and fast rule, and the level of work that I involved within that level of components only would need to have that the component level of designs as well. But otherwise, it may not really required. So, but it's key. Maybe it's very important to have a high level architecture for those type of projects that you are getting involved with. If that can be defined, and it would give a more visibility and clarity to other team members to come and validate whatever the work that they do. So why we need an architecture is to make sure that whatever the decision that we take, whatever the let's say if we have multiple option and if we want to make a decision, so we usually refer to the blueprint or to the architecture to decide whether whatever the decision that I take is still aligned into the overall expectation of the system. Did I answer your question, Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Shyamal. That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Do any of you guys have any questions? Akil, Angela, Kasha?
All right. So this is a very casual chat I wanted to have, but then again I'm still being settled here since I traveled here week ago. But maybe after a month or so, or even before that, if you want to have a session, I can help you to connect you to some other um, very experienced people as well, where even I'm looking up to. But I probably would be able to contribute in a more better way, maybe a month's time. I'm hopefully very well settled here by that time. Yeah, I'll be able to do maybe brainstorming session by designing a system along with you all, where probably I can share my thought process as well when it comes to that level of design, and as well as you can contribute and maybe you can shoot your questions. Uh,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Actually, like even the words, like that means a lot. Like you just willingly asking us, if you need any help. So yeah, so we're actually trying to continue with this because like even in like even in like the session that we're having right now, it kind of opens up like new thoughts, as in like the thoughts that we haven't really like ever popped in our heads. So
mm,
yeah, so I guess that was the purpose of like organizing this. uh,
yeah, 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 I got it. Yeah. So yeah, in addition to that, one thing that I wanted to share with you all, if this is a passion for you to be in the software field, don't get spoiled uh, uh, with the thousand or even I mean, numerous type of technologies, different type of framework that are out there. But try to learn your basis first, the software engineering principles, and don't go beyond certain type of technologies just alone. So let's say that the language that typically you will need to use is that not AWS, not GCP. That if you use cloud, then Uh, that is what is usually we expect from freshers as well as the newcomers from the industry. So if they use the dependency injection, if they talk about the dependency injection, microservices, distributed architecture, Saga pattern, those would be very nice. But if they talk about Docker, Kubernetes, things like that, maybe then we know that you are a little bit spoiled. But if you are talking about containerization, container orchestration, means that you usually use those terminologies if you know what is going behind these type of technologies. So try to um, master your vocabulary around these type of principles and the fundamentals. Not just go get away along with those technology jargons like technology names or the frameworks. Yeah. So that's one of the key advice I can give you. I'm pretty sure that you will pay you very well in the future if you can.
Yeah. Like instead of using like the name of that specific tool, like you need to know about like what's underneath, like the fundamentals underneath.
Exactly, exactly. So when even if you are trying to explain something to someone in an interview or in a different type of technology forums, always try to use those terminologies instead of the tool name. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Uh, so I don't know if this is a if this question is too broad, but you know, okay, yeah, let's phrase it in a different way. Like, where do you think like you took your first step to towards being like a software architect, or being a person with like a depth of knowledge instead of just one single framework?
Okay. I'll be brutally honest with you. This was in 2010, 3 years after I'm coming into the industry, where I was using latest and the greatest technologies that I thought was there out there. Spring was just came out, Hibernate just came out, Java 6 just came out, EGB3 just came out, and I was using these very well on the project, and I was very comfortable. And at this point, I wanted to try out a opportunity outside, and I knew if someone asked question from me from these type of areas, I can score very well. I was very confident. Then I went to that particular interview. I'm telling this to all my juniors. Good that you asked. I can share this with you as well. I went and sat front of three interviewers, and I'm ready to answer all the questions because I knew even they are using these some of these technologies. But the questions they asked were very fundamental. And at that point, uh, I felt very embarrassed. I didn't feel very well that I faced that interview. I came back, I reflected on myself, and then I realized what I was doing was wrong, and I must focus on my fundamentals. What I learned in my universities and the foundation of the technologies that I was using, and the reason for using those technologies, things like that. When I started to focus on these, I felt very confident as never before. That's the point, basic turning point of my life, especially in the career life, where whatever the technology thereafter I wanted to use, I really wanted to get into the depth of that technology and understand what are the design patterns used in this particular technology, what was the reason to use this particular technology, and likewise. And at that point onwards, for some reason, I was so lucky until today, I haven't failed any interviews in my life.
uh,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I believe that I learned the lesson hard way. And however, at that point, no one was there for me to teach this. But at that point onwards, whoever the juniors that I met, I was always forcing them to work on their fundamentals and basis. And I have seen them; they have been successful as well, and they are in very good position as well. And some of them even above my level. That I'm really happy for them that they have been able to be successful in their careers. So that's the advice I can give you all as well. I'm pretty sure it will pay very well. That's what I was saying before as well.
yeah, like when we are taught like these like fundamentals in uni, like we don't really get to see or understand like the real significance of it. So yeah, we just
Yeah,
think
yeah.
like when we really get to do like a project or something, we just think like even if I know like the fundamentals, like I need to know like this like certain set of frameworks or be like a quote unquote full stack engineer. But you
Mm.
don't really get nobody really emphasizes the significance of learning like the fundamentals the right way.
Yeah, one of the reason probably being that they expected to know this, but unless I mean, it's not just that. What I have seen is that once you get into, I mean, so I haven't been able to keep up with Java for last couple of years, but I spent quite a lot of time on understanding the fundamentals behind that. And even though someone asked me whether this will work with a new version, since I'm bit comfortable with the fundamentals, I know how to tackle those type of scenarios because no, since I know the fundamentals, I know this whether this can work with Java or not. So that's the advantage that you have when you know it, when you spend some time and master on those bases. I mean, whenever you get into a challenging situation, it's very easy to tackle. And it's not like that, right? So in my position, or maybe is when you become an experienced person, others are really depending on you, and you will have to make them very comfortable as well to rally around you. So someone come and ask you a question, you can't say I don't know all the time if it is especially related to the fundamentals. So, for an example, I had a guy work under me who was reporting to me. Even I say I don't know, he doesn't accept I don't know. He is pushing my boundaries for me to go and master it and come back and explain it to him. So that's typically what is happening. So it's really important to know the fundamentals and be humble as well, always, and that will really help you when you
Yeah.
progress in your career. I also very important if you don't know something, it's always it's very good if you tell someone asks something if you don't know, you must tell it. Very it becoming humble is very important as well. Otherwise, they'll talk behind your back as well. So I mean that's the point, right? You can't now. I understand that I can't learn and know everything that is out there. So I'm relying on now my team to come back and tell me how things are working. It's a two-way
Yeah. uh yeah.
I think I took a little over the scheduled time, and it's here 12:30 as well.
Oh yeah, you're joining from Australia. That means like 5:30 hours ahead of us, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we we must actually thank you for just taking time out of your sleeping schedule properly to
So
enlighten some juniors out here.
no, it's really I'm really glad to help you. You all who are very passionate, and I know doing very excellent job. Um, and Always keep learning, keep improving, while enjoying your life.
Yeah, that's a
And
fan.
we know that you are a type of person who enjoys the life, right? I mean, I can remember we had calls while you are running.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I need to come back to that lifestyle again here. Yeah, that's important. Otherwise, you'll get fed up, frustrated.
yeah,
Okay,
alrighty.
then. So maybe, hopefully, we'll catch up again. Um,
Yeah, yeah, probably in
yeah,
another session like this.
yeah.
Or if there's a any question or anything that anybody else here wants to ask, I think now it's the opportunity. Uh, yep, yep. By silence, I think
Yeah.
all of them are too scared to speak.
Yeah, so maybe let's catch up next time and
Yeah,
probably
let's.
more productive,
Yeah,
more
sure.
interactive, interesting manner. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, thank you, Shyamal. It was like really
Yeah. Thanks for
insightful.
inviting. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for inviting me as well, Hishan and the team. And good that I could talk to you after a very long time, and hopefully we'll try to have frequent discussions going forward.
Yeah. So let's take a group photo or rather a screenshot before leaving, so that you know.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'll. If you guys can, we'd like you guys turn on your cameras
Yeah.
so that we
So
can
I'm
take a
I'm
picture.
from the bedroom. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's fine. We can't see anything but the wall.
Anyway, I'm alive.
Yeah. All right. How do I take this? Yeah, everybody smile. Done. Nice. Yeah, all right then, everybody. It was Shyamal. He described himself earlier. So, yeah, I guess that's it for today's session because we planned we only scheduled it for like an hour, and the time has passed away now. So I guess better if we just wrap it up right now. So yeah, so thank you everybody for joining, and thank you Shamal again. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you
All
very
right.
much,
Stay
continue.
safe.
Shama.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye
Shyamal.
bye.
Okay.
Have a
Thank
great
you,
night.
Sam. Yeah.
He left the meeting.
So, are we going to have other sessions or going to wind up the call completely?
Uh, I
In
was
1 hour, right?
thinking, yeah, we had the session for like 1 hour and 8 minutes. So I think it's all right if we just keep them. Yeah, sorry for all the people who got ready because
Angela and Anjali, you was waiting
Uh,
for a session.
no, I was going to do that.
yeah, all right. So yeah, Akshikai asked us to take a photo and put it on social medias or something, like thanking Shyamal and just shouting out like that. We're doing
Uh,
something like this.
Angela, you can stop recording.
Yes,
Yeah.
our strategies are getting leaked.